South Korea records an all-time high of over 441,000 new COVID-19 cases. Authorities will review further relaxing distancing rules that impact businesses and gatherings. President-elect Yoon fills several more positions on his transition committee. He also vows to abolish the office of Senior Presidential Secretary for Civil Affairs, benchmark the U.S. personnel vetting process. The lunch meeting with President Moon is set for Wednesday. Russia's attack on Ukraine has been ongoing for nearly 3 weeks. A Ukrainian official believes the war could last until early May. Hello, it's good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. On the record high daily COVID-19 tally, South Korea reported 441,423 new cases as of 9 p.m. local time. The number of deaths rose to a new high of 293. Authorities provide reassurance the situation is manageable, with the peak of this wave expected soon. Han Sung-woo starts us off.
South Korea has now seen more than 7 million COVID-19 infections since the start of the pandemic. The country logged another 362,338 cases on Tuesday, the fourth straight day of more than 300,000 cases. Tuesday's figure was over 50,000 more than the day before, 1.8 times as many as a week ago, and 2.6 times as many as on the 1st of March. Tuesday's tally includes both positive PCR test results and positive results from rapid antigen tests conducted by professionals, which can now serve as official proof of infection. A record high 293 deaths were reported on Tuesday, bringing the death toll to 10,888. That total includes 8 children under the age of 10, of whom 2 died on Monday. The current number of severely ill patients has also reached an all-time high of 1,196, but health authorities say the situation is manageable.
There are enough beds for the infected. We have enough intensive care beds currently to take care of around 2,000 severely ill patients, and once we upgrade efficiency in allocating them, we believe there will be enough for around 2,500.
And with over 1.61 million people undergoing at-home treatment, the government has decided to exclude those with underlying conditions in their 50s from the so-called concentrated bracket starting Wednesday, to focus more on those over 60 and those with weak immunity. Health authorities have also hinted that at this point, the risks posed may have to be re-evaluated moving forward.
Around 2,500 to as many as 5,000 people a year die from the seasonal flu. Pneumonia, meanwhile, claims tens of thousands of lives, so there's a need to analyze and evaluate COVID-19's death toll from a comparative standpoint with other diseases.
Officials predict the Omicron surge will hit its peak between the 16th and 22nd of March, reaching a daily average of as high as 372,000. Before starting to decline from next Wednesday. The government will this week discuss changes to the nation's social distancing scheme. Under the current system that lasts until Sunday, private gatherings are limited to a maximum of 6 people, while restaurants and cafes must close by 11 p.m. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
The pandemic and related restrictions had a negative effect on people's quality of life. A new report shows social engagement dipped dramatically, leading to many feeling isolated and even less trusting. More people are also now overweight. Lee Hyun zooms in on this phenomenon.
New data shows the COVID-19 pandemic has led to more loneliness and social isolation in South Korea. According to Statistics Korea's annual report on the quality of life released on Tuesday, the social isolation rate was higher in 2021 than before the pandemic in 2019. Asked whether they have someone who can help do house chores when they get sick or someone who they can talk to, 34.1% of respondents said no, an increase of 6.4 percentage points from 2 years earlier. People also viewed others as less reliable or trustworthy. The proportion of respondents who said they trust other people fell by almost 16 percentage points in 2020 to 50.3%. This reflects the anxiety caused by restrictions of in-person activities amid COVID-19. South Koreans were far less active in 2021, only taking part in an average of 4.5 culture, leisure, or sports activities in that year, around half the number that people did in 2019. Along with a decline in leisure activities, the survey also showed more people are overweight. 38.3% of the people surveyed were overweight in 2020. That's an increase of over 4 percentage points from a year earlier. The agency said this increase is related to social restrictions on public facilities.
As physical activities tend to decline, with more people working from home and the closure of sports facilities during the pandemic, this may have led to more people being overweight.
Meanwhile, trust in authorities, including the government and medical industry, jumped to 47% in 2020 from a year earlier, with trust in medical organizations at 71%. The official says the government's early response to COVID-19 has contributed to those high levels of trust in 2020.
When the pandemic started in South Korea, the government managed to establish public health measures quickly compared to other major countries. That's why trust in the government, educational, and medical organizations rose by 9 percentage points.
He added more policies to encourage social engagements are needed to reduce social isolation and improve people's fitness. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
The number of reservations for international flights booked in South Korea has soared since the government announced it's doing away with mandatory quarantine on arrival. According to the travel booking site Interpark Tour, from March 11th, when the change was announced, through the 13th, the number of international flights booked was up 873% on year. The most popular destinations were Hawaii, Guam, and Saipan. The mandatory 7-day quarantine on arrival ends on March 21st for South Korean citizens and foreign nationals who are fully vaccinated. President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol has been keeping busy. Come Wednesday, he will be visiting the top office for lunch with President Moon Jae-in. They're set to discuss an array of topics, including pardoning a former president. Kim Do-yeon has the full story.
South Korean President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol will be visiting current President Moon Jae-in on Wednesday for a lunch meeting, the first get-together between the two in a year and 9 months.
It'll just be the two of them, without any aides or company. We think the setting will allow the two to be frank and comfortable.
During this lunch meeting, President-elect Yoon is expected to request for a pardon of the imprisoned former President Lee Myung-bak as an effort to show unity, an idea Yoon has had for a long time. The Transition Committee on Tuesday also said through a statement that the president-elect talked with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson over the phone the day before, promising to strengthen cooperation between the two countries going forward. Specifically, they agreed on denuclearizing North Korea as the two were concerned about the series of recent missile tests, as well as Russia's attack on Ukraine being a threat to democracy and freedom. According to the statement, the two agreed to meet after Yoon is inaugurated. As for ties with other countries, the president-elect also reportedly decided to send a special envoy to the U.S. and the EU. According to reports by Yonhap, the special envoy to U.S. is expected to be Park Jin, a parliament member with roots in the Foreign Affairs Ministry, while the EU special envoy is yet to be decided. On the other hand, there are reports that there will be no special envoys to China, Japan, and Russia, something out of the norm for an incoming South Korean president. In the meantime, on Tuesday, the president-elect went back to visit the people who were forced to evacuate their homes due to the wildfire in the county of Ulsan. It was just 11 days since he visited as a presidential candidate.
지금 정부하고도 잘 협조를 해가지고 또 우리 문 대통령께서도 특별 재난지역 선포를 해주셨으니까 저희가 이어받아가지고 규정도 조금씩 바꾸고 이렇게 해서 저희가 하여튼 크게 걱정 안 하시도록 잘 하겠습니다.
He was also briefed by the head of the Forest Service as well as the mayor of the county on the current restoration efforts. Yoon also added that he will make sure the nuclear power plant in the region that is being built is finished so that it can help with the local economy through additional jobs. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol is not wasting time moving forward with his agenda. The former prosecutor general filled several more transition committee positions and looks to make various changes to Cheongwade, including abolishing the office of Presidential Secretary for Civil Affairs and benchmarking the U.S. personnel vetting process. Kim Hyun-sung has the latest.
President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol is one step closer to completing his transition team. Yoon's spokesperson Kim Eun-hye announced in a briefing on Tuesday morning the names that will lead its three divisions. For the head of its Economy First Division, Yoon called in Choi Sang-mok, who was the Vice Minister of Economy and Finance under the Park Geun-hye administration. As an expert in macroeconomics and financial economics, Choi will work alongside President-elect Yoon and try to crack some of Yoon Suk-yeol's top pledges, COVID-19 relief funds and pension reform. For the Diplomacy and Security Division, former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs Kim Sung-han was named. Kim is an expert in international politics with 3 decades of experience. He helped facilitate Yoon's call with U.S. President Biden last week and has been appointed to strengthen the Korea-U.S. alliance. For political, judicial, and administrative affairs, former Assemblyman Lee Yong-ho has been appointed as secretary. According to spokesperson Kim Eun-hye, Lee comes from a journalism background and has proven his political caliber as a chief policymaker for the People's Party. She added that Lee will help restore justice and common sense. But should they end up following Yoon to the Blue House, they will have to get final approval from the police and the Justice Ministry. According to spokesperson Kim, under the Yoon administration, the presidential office will only hold the power to recommend names to posts, and it will leave the final vetting process to the Ministry of Justice and the police. Previously, the Blue House Senior Secretary of Civil Affairs handled personnel, but Yoon's spokesperson said that this had often led to abuse of power. So Yoon plans to shut down that senior secretary office and model his staff hiring on the U.S., where the final screening of candidates is left to the FBI or other authorities so that there's an equal balance of power. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Satellite imagery shows North Korea has placed strips of concrete at Sunan Airport, the very location where it fired ballistic missiles in recent weeks. This is likely to be part of preparations for another missile launch. U.S. forces stationed in South Korea enhanced the intensity of exercises for their Patriot missile air defense system. Bae Eun-ji has the details.
North Korea has reportedly laid 2 concrete slabs at its Sunan International Airport in Pyeongyang in what appears to be part of efforts to launch intercontinental ballistic missiles. Citing a commercial satellite image taken on Saturday, Voice of America News reports that the North has positioned flat concrete structures in between the airfield's runway and taxiway. It said both are 50 meters wide. One is 220 meters long, the other 100 meters. The North launched ballistic missiles from Sunan Airport earlier this month and in late February, in what it claimed were tests needed to develop a reconnaissance satellite. But this was seen as an attempt to disguise the actual purpose of testing a new ICBM, called Hwasong-17. The concrete structures are seen as a preparation for a missile launch, as previous missile tests used a transporter erector launcher on top of a concrete base to increase missile capability. This also helps the launcher from getting damaged, as it can get extremely heavy when fully fueled, and puts tremendous pressure on the ground underneath. South Korea's military said it's keeping close tabs on the situation with the U.S.
As for North Korea preparing for an ICBM missile launch and nuclear weapons tests, South Korea and the U.S. intelligence agencies are working together to closely monitor the situation and have a strong defense posture.
Seoul's Unification Ministry on Tuesday urged the North to halt any actions that raise tensions on the Korean peninsula and called for a return to talks. Meanwhile, former White House coordinator for arms control and weapons of mass destruction, Gary Samore, told VOA News that if the North launches an ICBM, he expects South Korea and the U.S. to respond by resuming large-scale joint military exercises. With Seoul and Washington on alert for a possible ICBM test, the U.S. military flew a reconnaissance aircraft over the Korean peninsula on Tuesday. According to flight tracking service Flight Radar 24, the RC-135S Cobra Ball spy aircraft, based in Okinawa, Japan, flew over the East Sea for around 9 hours before returning to base. Also on Tuesday, U.S. Forces Korea said it has increased intensity of the exercise in the 35th Air Defense Artillery Brigade stationed in South Korea and released photos of the drills. It said this is to demonstrate its capabilities and commitment to defending the country, and added that North Korea's significant increase in its missile testing activity undermines peace and security in the Northeast Asia region. Pyeongyang, Arirang News.
Turning our attention to Ukraine now, it's been 20 days since Moscow launched a full-scale invasion of that country. Although the two sides held talks to bring an end to the war, the attacks continue. Our Song Yujin is standing by on the line with the latest. Eugene, do fill us in.
Well, Daniel, Russia's attacks on Ukraine have been going on for almost 3 weeks, with heavy bombardments continuing day after day. Airstrikes and attacks are taking place on multiple Ukrainian cities, including the capital Kyiv, Chernihiv, Mykolaiv, and Kharkiv. Following the deaths of 2 people after a shelling in a residential area in Kyiv, the city's mayor announced a 35-hour curfew through his official Telegram channel. Under the curfew, it will be prohibited to move around the city without special permission starting Tuesday, 8 p.m. local time. Meanwhile, one of the advisors to the Ukrainian president's chief of staff said late on Monday that the war could last until early May under 2 scenarios. One is a peace deal being struck within 1 or 2 weeks, and the second is the war continuing until an agreement is met in mid to late April.
We also have to talk about the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Any updates on the number of casualties and refugees?
Well, the latest death toll announced by the United Nations is 636, including 46 children. However, the real figure is likely to be higher as intense fighting in Kharkiv and Mariupol has caused delays in transferring information. In terms of refugees, data from the United Nations Refugee Agency on Monday shows that the number has surpassed 2.8 million.
We heard very scary explosions. You never know if a bomb will be fired today or not. We hid in the basement. We are afraid for our relatives and friends. That's how you throw away your whole past life and go to another country.
The international community has been providing weapons and supplies to assist Ukraine, and most recently, South Korea joined these efforts.
Yes, well, early Tuesday, the South Korean Ministry of National Defense announced an $800,000 support package to Ukraine, which could be shipped as early as this week. Seoul will provide some 20 non-lethal supplies, including bulletproof helmets, blankets, tents, meals, and first aid kits.
We have decided to provide non-lethal supplies to Ukraine. Discussions are currently underway regarding the specifics, such as shipping methods.
Meanwhile, South Korea's national air carrier, Korean Air, has decided to suspend all flights to and from Moscow and Vladivostok until the end of April due to safety concerns. Flights to Europe and Eastern North America that use Russian airspace will be rerouted. Following suit, another major South Korean air carrier, Asiana Airlines, will stop flying over Russian airspace.
One last question before we let you go. There's news of fresh new sanctions in response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine and its people. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the European Union and the UK announced additional sanctions on Tuesday. The European Council announced it will impose a 4th round of sanctions targeted towards the Russian economy and individuals. Specifically, exports of luxury goods from the EU, such as cars and jewelry, and imports of Russian steel products will be banned. More than 600 Russian oligarchs and business elites will be sanctioned as well. The UK will also suspend the exports of luxury goods to Moscow and is to slam an additional 35% tariff on hundreds of Russian imports, which include vodka, steel, and fur. That's all I have at this hour. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Eugene, thank you for those updates. We appreciate it. Moving on, the security chiefs of the U.S. and China met in Rome on Monday for talks on a wide range of issues, including Russia, North Korea, and Taiwan. It was a session Washington reportedly described as intense. Yoon Jung-min shares with us what was discussed.
The U.S. brought up serious concerns to China, warning of consequences if China helps bail out Russia, when U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met on Monday with China's top diplomat Yang Jiechi in Rome.
The U.S. and its allies are putting sanctions on Moscow that could cripple its economy in response to its invasion of Ukraine. Reports say Russia has requested military and financial assistance from China and that Beijing has signaled its willingness to help.
We've made very clear that any country that would seek to attempt to bail Russia out of this economic, financial morass will be met with consequences. We will ensure that no country is able to get away with such a thing.
Also discussed were growing threats from North Korea as Seoul and Washington report signs that the regime could test fire an ICBM in the near future. The U.S. reportedly expressed concerns about the tensions created by Pyongyang with its recent missile launches and brought up Beijing's role on the Korean peninsula. China is a close ally of North Korea and also a permanent member of the UN Security Council. China brought up the issue of Taiwan, with Yang expressing severe concerns and resolute objections about growing U.S.-Taiwan cooperation. He reportedly mentioned the issues of Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and Tibet as well. Experts say that if China does help Russia, it would rapidly worsen U.S.-China relations and intensify a Cold War-like mood in geopolitics, which would also impact North Korea and Taiwan issues. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Shares of top Chinese tech companies listed on Wall Street were down sharply again on the growing risk that they could share the fate of several other Chinese firms facing possible delisting for not meeting U.S. audit requirements. Shares of Alibaba and JD.com fell by 10% and Baidu shares by 8%. Last week, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission identified 5 Chinese companies as having failed to comply with a law that allows the SEC to delist foreign firms if they don't let regulators review their audits for 3 straight years. Analysts say another factor in the sell-off has been the lockdown in the Chinese tech hub of Shenzhen and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. South Korea's biggest fashion event starts this week. The Seoul Metropolitan Government says content from the event this year is both in person and online. It will be the first such event featured on the channel YouTube Fashion and Beauty. Seoul Fashion Week starts on Friday, March 18th, and runs until next Wednesday, showcasing trends for the coming fall and winter. Before, the official YouTube channel, with around 1.5 million subscribers, mainly showed only fashion weeks in New York, London, Milan, and Paris. The addition of Seoul is largely thanks to growing global interest in Korean fashion.
Sunny spells are back in the forecast for most regions tomorrow. Southern parts of the country will be especially warm with daytime highs over 20 degrees Celsius. Warmer temperatures will create big contrast in temperatures of more than 10 degrees. Dressing in layers will be recommended tomorrow. Dust concentrations will rise across western parts of the country. That includes the Seoul metropolitan area, Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces. The spike in dust levels is due to the combination of microparticles from overseas and domestic air pollutants. For those in the area, please have a mask that filters out the dust particles, such as a KF94. Sunny conditions will dominate for the morning hours. Seoul and Daejeon will start up at 3 degrees. Daytime highs will be 2 to 4 degrees warmer than the seasonal norms. Seoul will reach 15 degrees, Daejeon 19. Gwangju and Gyeongju will be topping out at 23 degrees. Another round of nationwide rain will begin on Thursday night. With the cold showers, temperatures will be dropping until the weekend. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
This is where we have to wrap things up. As always, thank you for watching.